All right, we're going to get this great event started, and welcome everybody. Welcome to those of you who are here in person and also to those of you that are online. I'm Kevin Hall. I have the privilege of being the president of the University of Victoria. And I'd like to start by welcome to territory and pay my respects and acknowledge the Lekwungen people on whose traditional territory the university stands, and to the Songhees, the Esquimalt, and the Saanich people whose historic relationship with this land continues to today. And I pledge my commitment to walk the path to reconciliation together. And I'd also like to pay respects to elders past and present. So today we're here to start talking about the next phase that we're going into with the strategic vision for the university. And I'd like to start off just with some housekeeping items, and I'm going to turn it over to JP from the Office of the President, who's going to take us through a few things that we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, KH. First of all, a big shout out to School of Music and Ken Koswick, whose song Feel the Groove was featured in the opening music. We heard Ken on vocals and keyboard, there was Peter Minette on bass, and Steve Berg on guitar. All three are alum of the Music and Computer Science program. Quickly, I'm just going to run through ways for you to best participate today. So for accessibility support, live captioning and sign language interpretation are both available. Our captionist is Alex Gilroy. Our interpreter here is Tanya Creed from the Island Deaf and Hard of Hearing Center. Thank you so much for being here. And for virtual guests, to access captioning, click on the live transcript icon at the bottom of your screen. We are going to record this webinar today for those who couldn't make it. Now, we're also going to use Slido. And I hope you know what Slido is. We've been using it many, many, many times. But in case you need some help, just follow the directions in our chat or what's up here on the screen. Best way to interact with this is to click on the QR code. That's that big square Rorschach test that always looks like my father's disappointment. And it'll take you right to the website. And that's about it. If you have any issues at all, you can always put it in chat and we'll help you out as fast as possible. Back to you, Kevin.
Well, thanks, James. And I first wanted to start off by pointing out my friend, Elango, who's here today. Most of you know Elango Van. He's here in his role as a special advisor to me during the strategic visioning process. And he'll be taking us through a lot of what we've heard. Last time we had a town hall was February. So that's 3 months ago, something like that. A lot's happened in that time. We've gone out to the community to really try to get a sense of what people want UVic to be. What is their UVic? What's the vision for UVic? And that's what we're here today to discuss. We're here to summarize what we heard during what we've been calling phase 2 of this process and telling you where we're going to be moving as we go into what we call phase 3 of the process. So it's really a session for information. We also asked you to submit questions as you signed up for this event, either in person or virtually, and so we've used those questions to sort of steer some of the content we'll be giving you today. So thanks for the questions that you submitted. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Elango. He'll take us through the agenda and a number of slides to describe what we've been hearing over the last 3 months.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to engage with us. As Kevin highlighted, it's a very crucial point in the journey we have in the strategic planning process. We are finishing up phase 2, where we collected quite a bit of data, quite a bit of information. We are starting phase 3, where we get to look at this data, unpack it, try to make sense of it, and of course, try to see what kind of directions does the university should be heading in by looking at this data and getting your help in actually exploring it further. That's one of the primary objectives here. We want to share the themes with you, but we want your wisdom, your ideas, and your thoughts in terms of making sense of it, as well as concrete ideas and suggestions for moving forward. But let me start with telling you a little bit about phase 2. This was a process that started in early February, and we wrapped it up in mid-April. Very wide consultation, multiple modalities, multiple formats. We tried to make sure that every group on campus, students, faculty, staff, they would have a voice, they could get involved, they could get engaged. People have different preferences and how they want to get engaged, and we try to do our best to make sure we are very inclusive in this process. And we were amazed. The level of engagement that came through, Kevin and I would go and visit different units, different faculties, different divisions, and we would have a few questions for the group there. We would usually walk in with 3 questions. We never got past the second question thanks to the level of engagement that people had and the ideas they put forward. And the second observation I had was, it was fascinating to see that the bulk of the ideas, the bulk of the comments were very positive, very constructive, getting us to think big and think about the future. There were a few concerns and complaints. That's pretty typical when you have a process like this, but it's deeply encouraging to see that the bulk of the concepts, bulk of the ideas were very forward-looking and very constructive. Right? And just to give you a feel for the level of engagement that we had 6 town halls, starting with the one that Kevin mentioned in February. That's for the entire campus. Then we had different town halls for the different VP portfolios and the university secretary portfolio. We had multiple meetings with Indigenous students, staff, and faculty. There were about 250 participants in those meetings. We had 820 survey responses. These were the online survey responses questionnaire that we had, and people were inputting their ideas. We had multiple comments and votes shared online, and we went to every single faculty and division on campus, and we had close to 700 people participate in that one. Right? And of course, we had multiple pop-up booths where students could come and they could post their ideas, and the most creative, the coolest, boldest ideas came from the students. They were not held hostage by tradition. They could think into the future. They could think big, and they were absolute joy in terms of to engage with and get their thoughts and ideas. So if you look at this collection, it was quite a bit of work from early February to mid-April, but the level of engagement, the level of contributions was significant. Kevin, any comments on that, your experiences during the process itself?
Yeah, thanks, Lango. I was just amazed at the breadth of the information that came in. Some people had ideas that were about changing things now in a small way. Others had these huge pieces of vision that they're thinking out 30 and 40 years, thinking this university could do this if we make this kind of change now. And I just think that whole breadth was amazing. And you saw that right across the student population. You saw that with staff and with faculty.
Yeah. And you enjoyed all those student pop-up booths where you met with
the student pop-up booths were absolutely the most amazing experience. To sit around and actually chat to students. And what I love, the students really don't hold anything back. They tell you what they really think about their educational experience at UVic and how it could change. And the students have a very different look at the future, I think, than what we've had in the past. And certainly the pandemic has really started to focus their attentions around things like climate change, for example, and what's the role of the university in climate, not just from the science perspective, but also the human condition. How does climate change affect people on a day-to-day basis? And they're interested in that. So it was just a really fantastic experience.
Yeah. And we had a whole bunch of questions that we asked people. For example, we asked them, where will the world be in 30 years' time? Think of the big trends, big developments, try to get a feel for where we are heading so that we can figure out as a university what we should be doing. And then we had questions on, think of our university and what kind of activities should we engage in to be successful and effective. And what should UVic be known for, right? And what are the things that we should be focusing on? What kind of ideas do you have to make sure we can break down the silos on campus and have better collaboration across the units, across divisions, between the administrative side of the house and the academic side of the house? We asked questions about the core values that should be guiding the university, and of course, try to get a feel for their thoughts on UVic's place locally and globally. Right? A whole set of questions. And the data that came in, when we looked at it, we realized there were 3 kinds of clusters. The first set of comments had to do with what we would call the core mission of a university. It was about excellence in research, excellence in teaching, in outreach. Very important, very critical, but we realized that would be the same for every university around us, right? That's the core mission of any academic institution. So we need to pay attention to it, but that by itself was not going to help us differentiate ourselves from the other universities. So we kind of kept those comments to one side. We're going to pay attention to it, but that's not what we were looking for in terms of giving us a sense of identity and direction. The second set of comments had to do with underlying values and principles that should govern our behavior and conduct as an institution as we move forward. They would be the anchors around which we would build our activities. No matter what direction we are heading in, they will be the foundation as we move forward. And they will likely last beyond the 5-year horizon of the strategic plan. Once again, important, critical, we'll pay attention to it, but we wanted to go a bit deeper and look at what are the themes that emerged that give us a sense of identity, a sense of direction for the university that would allow us to channel our energies and our resources. And if we do them well, that's what we would be known for around the world. And we also wanted these themes to have a certain relevance and resonance across the campus. It doesn't matter which academic unit or administrative unit you come from, you ought to be able to see it, understand it, interpret it, enact it, operationalize it in your own way, so that collectively we would be coming at each theme in a variety of ways, and so that there is a holistic, deep, rich living of the theme. Right? So we are looking for those themes that would kind of be pertinent to every unit on campus. So we have those themes. We're going to show that to you. The labels themselves are placeholder labels. I know people sometimes react to the labels. It's a bit of a challenge trying to come up with labels that truly reflect the essence of a theme or the bucket, but is also jargon-free and tries to be a bit unique. So over the summer, as we move forward, with your help and your feedback and your advice, we will be continuing to work on that, tweak the language, kind of go deeper into the themes themselves. So what we're going to do now is to show you the 4 themes, just the labels, and then go into each theme. I'll explain what each theme stands for, then we'll have the Slido questions, get your thoughts, and then move on to the next theme. So we'll do it theme by theme so that we can concentrate on one theme at a time. Yeah?
Okay, before you press that button.
No.
Really important.
Yeah.
Before we show you the themes, a couple things. First of all, when you look at themes for the first time, you might go, oh, those are kind of lame. They don't really mean anything to me. So give them a chance. Let them kind of percolate a little bit through you. But also recognize that the themes in the strategic plan are not the upper level. We have a vision for the university. We have commitments for the university, what we're committing to as a university. And then the themes are kind of the areas that we'll use to operate the university over the next 5 to 10 years to reach our vision. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind. And we did have a couple of sessions with the leaders group across campus.
Yeah.
It was about 120 people came to a meeting. And again, they were kind of like, oh, I'm not sure I get these themes. But at the end of the 2-hour meeting, people were really resonating with the themes because there was something in it, whether you were a student, a staff member, a faculty member, a community member, an alumni, something in each of the themes for you. And I think that's really important, that we don't create themes that are just applicable to one group on campus.
The next slide
Time for
captures
the
exactly
reveal,
what you said. No, so we do have the underlying principles and values. We are going to come up with a vision, but for the purposes of this town hall and this discussion, we want to focus only on the themes. Okay? And here are the 4 themes: truth, respect, and reconciliation, healthy people and planet, innovation in all that we do, and partnering for positive change. Okay? Let me walk you through each one of those themes. Here is the first one. One of the strongest themes that emerged in the data that we collected, doesn't matter from students, faculty, staff, all the entire campus community. It's about how can the university contribute meaningfully and authentically towards our efforts towards reconciliation, indigenization, and decolonization. How can we be at the forefront of doing that, not just in our scholarship and research, not just in our teaching, but in our practices on campus and in our engagement with the communities around us? How can we purposefully invite an indigenous perspective into the conversation we have, and how can the university be a place for critical debate and rebuilding of indigenous democracies, citizenry, and societies? Some of the other labels that people suggested: rights of indigenous people, revitalization, shared wisdoms exchange. We also asked people, come up with some concrete ideas on how you would make this theme come alive. Right? Here are some examples, and we're going to ask you the same, just to get your thought process going. Some of the ideas that came up: employ diverse classroom settings for listening and learning. It's not just about the sage on stage, just lecturing all the time. There are different ways to learn, and let's actually understand it and enact those ways of doing it. Let's teach, learn, and hire within or near indigenous communities. Let's not just wait for them to come to us, that we ought to be going out to these communities to engage and connect, develop science and math programs and textbooks in indigenous languages, have cultural training, mandatory training for students, staff, and faculty, find ways to bring elders and students together, very powerful in terms of getting that connection, and embed indigenous cultural competencies in job descriptions. So you can see there's a range of ideas that are coming up as we go into it, right? So what we have for you now are questions on this theme. We would like to first ask you a question on exploring this theme and then on some specific action items. So on to the first question. What does truth, respect, and reconciliation mean to you? From where you sit in the organization, your domain, your discipline, what does this mean to you?
I think while they're starting to populate this, it's just important to recognize UVic has a history of being responsible in its work towards reconciliation. But as an education institute, we've also contributed to some of the issues that are here for our Indigenous populations. And I think, under Vice President Rubina Thomas's leadership, there's so much more we can do. Education and research, of course, is always a focus of the university, and so we'll have a huge focus there. But community outreach, the way we run our campus, our purchasing policies, et cetera, can all be part of what we do around our work towards reconciliation. And just again to highlight, these are just examples. These are not the list of things. We're looking for great ideas.
You got some interesting comments coming up there, Kevin?
Yeah, I think the inclusion piece, of course, is a big piece. Inclusion is the toughest part of equity, diversity, and inclusivity. We've got a lot of work to do on our campus with that. Decolonization is something that we're actively trying to work on. I think decolonizing our courses and our content, that's something that a lot of people have been working on for years. We continue to work on decolonizing our governance of the university, and we're starting to see things like that. We had a fantastic installation ceremony for our new chancellor. Myself, I had an installation ceremony following post-Salish protocol, and we're looking at how we can change the governance of the institution. So it's great to see decolonization.
And you can see accountability coming up as well in terms of a sense of understanding the actions that have been taken, are taken, and make sure there's a line of responsibility and transparency.
And we see self-determination coming up there. And again, this is very something we have to work on the right label. We're working with the Office of the Vice President of Indigenous and trying to figure out what is that label for this particular one.
Also like that one, walking a path together. I think it was the acknowledgement that this journey is not just for the Indigenous communities. We have to be with them. It's everybody's responsibility to move forward in doing that.
Absolutely. We're also seeing respect to come up here. Of course, truth, respect, and reconciliation all go together. And what's our role as a university in actually telling the truth, particularly for this region, I think, is something we have to look at.
I saw humility come up, which came up several times in the discussions we had, humility and dignity, that we approach this with a sense of humility in listening, understanding, and not just about walking in with a plan already done in terms of saying we know what to do, how to move forward. But active listening becomes central to it.
Yeah, listening is absolutely critical. So we've got ongoing learning, rethinking learning. I think that's an important part of the decolonization process as well, understanding and acting. And I know there's a lot of work going on right now. Somebody's put up here land back. There's a lot of work going on about can we repatriate some of the university's land, or can we utilize the land, or let the local communities utilize the land. So lots of great ideas coming up there.
Wonderful ideas. Thank you for that. We're going to take that as we look at what the theme actually means. But on to the second question here. This is where we're looking for your concrete ideas and specific initiatives that the university needs to engage in to be a leader in truth, respect, and reconciliation. We got some ideas coming up here, Kevin, on specific. Offering courses from Heather Ranson. Review of administrative processes.
Connection to spiritual elders and leaders, I think, which is some great work been started on that, but a lot more to do in that space.
And I think that, Kevin, has come up in the discussion several times, that there's a lot of wisdom that is there, and they have a different way of transferring that wisdom, and that we need to spend time with them to be able to absorb that wisdom. It is not something that can be packaged and just passed on.
Absolutely. Review of administrative processes, of course, that is part of our governance, and we are looking at that as part of the work that's done under the new Provincial Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, the DRIPA. There's about 69 or 70 action items for institutions to look at, so we'll be using that as part of our guidance.
More Indigenous people in leadership roles at the university. I know, Kevin, you've talked quite a bit about that in terms
absolutely.
of the diversity that we need.
Critical to our future. Share or cede decision-making power. We're definitely trying to look at how we can do that. We have, for example, an Indigenous Community Engagement Council, of which the president of the university used to be the chair, and the president is no longer the chair. We've given that right over to the Indigenous community to chair the committee, and I think there's much more we can do in that way. And we need some scrolling, whoever's controlling this. Not able to scroll. It's great to see people online, though. You can see the support as they're being upvoted.
I did see teaching languages come up as one of the ideas, and I think that's been highlighted in the other feedback we got as well. And once again, tapping into the resources that we have on campus to do it. There we go. We have.
Language courses, of course, Center Indigenous Leadership. Restructure the governance, which is certainly something that's on the table right now to look at in the future.
The one that's coming up here, Kevin, change metric to evaluate outcomes. That came up in several of the meetings with the Indigenous communities, that the current systems for evaluation and rewarding are based on a certain template that has to be broadened and has to be rethought to include an Indigenous approach to evaluating that, whether it's for faculty or for staff.
Yeah. Upgrading systems, invest, and that's a great comment as well. We absolutely have to invest in all of these things we want to do. We can't just keep moving along at an incremental pace. So it's up to the leadership team at this university to try to figure out a way to come up with some money to invest. But certainly that's really critical to make our goals. Hire more Indigenous academics and artists, certainly on the books.
Yeah. More outreach to the Indigenous community, and I think the spirit behind that is to make sure that we actually are proactive in connecting and leaving this campus and not just kind of expecting everybody to come to us.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think more of things. I was up in Bamfield a few weeks ago, and we had a PhD defense in the local Hawaiian community. Professor Tommy Happinuk defended his PhD in the Longhouse at the Hawaiian community, which was fantastic to see.
Yeah. We have a bunch more coming up, Kevin, but I think we have, time is up. We need to get into the next theme. So thank you very much for these ideas. We'll take them, of course, and I'll, towards the end of the presentation, talk about how these will be used as we move forward. Let me focus on the second theme that we have, healthy people and planet. This was a big bucket, a very important one. It looks at how do we focus on sustainability and climate action, not just for the global community, but also on campus, our research, our teaching, our expertise in that towards that end, but also looking at the healthy people side of it and the connection between the two. And that talks about equity, diversity, and inclusion to make sure that we are having people supported and included in multiple ways, making sure there's a work environment that nurtures the well-being and the growth and thriving of our students, faculty, and staff, including mental health issues and physical health issues, to make sure that at the end of the day we have a thriving community here at the university in the research that we do, in the teaching that we engage in, and the practices that we have. Different labels that came with it: thriving people and place, thriving people and healthy planet, healthy futures, sustainable people, places, and planet. And when we asked people for ideas, a whole bunch of ideas came up. Make UVic a great place to work, and that includes things like flexibility in the workplace, remote work arrangements, making sure we have a culture of respect and inclusion here, addressing housing issues and access to education for all. That's affordability is a key issue in Victoria especially, and this became an important aspect. Make sure we have equitable processes and supports for marginalized groups. Focus research on the world's critical climate issues. Focus on SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, as actionable goals for degrees. Just think about having degrees built around the 17 SDGs. Integrate study of humans and society more into discussions of climate and sustainability, that we need to come at this in a multidisciplinary approach. And of course, embrace an indigenous lenses and voices in understanding what health means. That we may have different interpretations of health, and to make sure we bring in the indigenous lens into doing that. Once again, an important bucket, a key theme that emerged and that talked about the planet as well as the people in terms of how do we make sure it's sustainable and healthy. So again, 2 questions for you. The first one, asking you to kind of interpret this theme based on where you are. What does the healthy people, planet, and team mean to you from your discipline or your standpoint?
Yeah, and this was a really interesting one at a previous meeting we had, where a lot of people thought, oh, we should split these apart. We should have healthy planet, we should have healthy people. But that was very polarizing as well. A lot of people thought, no, we can't ignore people and the planet. These things fit together. And this, of course, is not just about climate change. It's about a healthy workforce. It's about having a campus. It's activated, a campus where people want to come and work rather than go, oh gosh, I've got to go to work today. You actually want to come to work because there's something here for you. So it's got so many pieces in here. It brings in the wellness of the people and the community. How do we design our campus so that wellness is improved, et cetera, et cetera.
And there's quite a bit of focus on...
You can see that coming now, right? Mental health, community, One Health, world-leading research is coming up. And of course, as a university, we should always aspire to excellence in research and excellence in teaching. That's a given. But it's good to see that people like that. Sustainable energy is coming up here. The climate action piece, justice, of course, fits in here, which is fantastic, which was the intent to really make it about people and the planet.
The work-life balance has come up, Kevin. We heard quite a bit about burnout issues and people making sure that you have to engage the whole person. It's not just about me at work and the rest of me doesn't matter.
That's
that
right.
We have to pay attention to the whole person.
And that came out very clearly with our students, right? The students were really focusing on, coming here is not just about filling my head full of information. You have to think of me. You have to think of my future. You have to think of the types of jobs I might want to have, how I might go about seeking a job.
The issue around climate action, affordable housing, of course, that came up. The hybrid work arrangements, Kevin, that we had quite a bit of comments around that aspect of it, that we truly investigate flexibility and the remote work.
How does that look moving forward from the pandemic? Absolutely, right? Healthy planet equals healthy people, somebody put up there. So work-life balance coming out really strong.
Equity, a sense of equity, a sense of inclusion came up as well, that we look at the diversity that we have and to recognize that equity and diversity are different from inclusion, that we can play the equity diversity numbers game, but truly to make this a wonderful place.
We have to be inclusive.
Inclusive,
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the time here, Kevin. I think we need to move on to the next one. Thank you for your ideas on that one. Let's see if we can translate some of these interpretations into concrete actions. Here is the next question. What specific initiatives does the university need to engage in to be a leader in healthy people and planet?
Okay, we're going to wait for some good ideas to come up here. It was just great to see some of the connections made in that last question, and it was good to see that very similar things were coming up in the other meetings we've held. So people are thinking the same things around this theme.
Yeah, and I think you're going to find the connections across the themes as well.
Yeah.
You start to see similar ideas come up.
So here we've got some coming up now. We've got a permaculture planning principles, postdoc funding. I think Fraser's out there in the crowd.
Yes.
Hey, Fraser. Address poverty.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that healthy people leads to a healthy planet.
Yeah,
I think that's a great comment.
Combat the grind culture, the notion that we are constantly pushed to the edge in terms of contributing, but unless we are healthy, it really takes away from the amount and the quality and the volume of what we can contribute.
Absolutely. on-campus healthcare for staff, faculty, and students. We've heard this time and time again on our tour through the faculties and the divisions. Could we incorporate, for example, the same types of healthcare we have for students, for staff and faculty? It's absolutely something we're committed to work on with the Provincial Health Office, which is the one that actually regulates all this.
Yeah, and reimagine how we use space in buildings. And I know that's one of the issues that you keep talking about in terms of how we need to have a completely different interpretation and ideas.
We certainly hear everywhere we go, space is an issue on campus, and the question of how we use the space, I think, becomes a really important question. A low carbon energy source, of course, luckily we're at the university that's probably the most committed to both divestment and using renewable energies in this country. And from the perspective of not just talking about it, but actually doing it, and we have one of the best physical plant operations on the campus, and we're actually switching over to LNG this summer to actually reduce our carbon footprint even more. But we always have to keep moving in this space.
There was a comment about incorporating different ways of healing and treating each other. So in the indigenous approaches to good health as well, that needs to be built in.
So we've got rainwater harvesting. That's a great concept in Victoria because my gosh, does it ever rain? So I'm finding. So I think we could do that absolutely. Daycare and support for elder care is a great idea.
The campus has a living lab where whatever we are researching and studying, that we actually try it out. And why not? We're going to be preaching to the world, but we should be doing it first.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's particularly important with the Healthy Planet piece. Early career researcher support, I see popped in there. And of course, I think research support in general has to be a part of the equation if we're going to solve some of these grand challenges. Linked to the UN SDGs in a concrete way. Thanks for that, Michael. And that's what we're really trying to do with the establishment of a United Nations Training Center here for the Sustainable Development Goals. But we're also really trying to look at our research and how we can use the SDGs to guide some of the research and research support.
Maybe even have degrees around them.
More childcare spots. We do have a new childcare facility underway, but certainly I think more childcare is really important for students, staff, and faculty. It's not just one group that needs childcare. Discounted tuition for employees and their families, something we absolutely have to look at. For sure. No doubts about that. And that makes healthy people, and it makes the next generation of thought leaders come to the university as well.
Wonderful ideas, but time to move on to the next theme. So we just keep moving here. Thank you. Thank you for those ideas. Here is the next one here. Innovation in all that we do. Here is one of those buckets where we are still struggling with the label itself. But the spirit behind what we are saying is, as a university, we need to challenge, question, critique, deconstruct, and reconstruct everything that we do in the way we do our research, the way we teach, our processes, and our approaches in all activities on campus. The idea is to see how can we constantly and continuously reimagine what we're doing. It's not a one-time thing we're talking about, but we build a culture, we build an ethos of constantly pushing the boundaries and doing things in better and more improved ways. And the idea is not that we're going to blow everything up. That was not the spirit behind this, but rather see a constant fundamental shift in our thinking, and that we make it a practice to do so and not just do it once in a while, but all the time. Right? The labels that came up were continuous reimagining, creativity, versatility, ingenuity, positive change, continuous improvements. So you get the spirit behind it. It's about applying to a way of being rather than to any one aspect. It is not about more tech startups. It is not just about STEM, but it's about a fundamental way of being and operating on this campus. The action items that people suggested, build cross-university consortia on the world's biggest problems, create these groups, create these centers where people from different disciplines and different areas can come and do this. Have a culture of experimentation and a comfort level and a permission to fail. That if we truly want to be innovative, we have to experiment, we have to try, and it's okay to fail because that's the way we actually move forward. empowering decision-making across the system. It came up in the previous theme as well, the notion that good ideas can come from any part of this campus. So it doesn't matter, the hierarchy shouldn't matter that much. It can be across the entire width of the campus in terms of where these ideas come from, that we encourage that. We make sure there are ways for those ideas to actually come and have an impact. Use technology to automate, enhance, and improve the staff, student, faculty experience, to delight rather than to frustrate. I took that phrase directly from one of the comments that we got. And to make sure that we are adopting an investment lens and not a cost lens. That is key, because we can think of initiatives, we can think of new ways of doing things and kind of pull back thinking of the cost, or we can think of the benefits and the gains and think of this as an investment into the future. Right? So a powerful theme that may give us a very different way of functioning on this campus. So the first question for you on that: what does innovation in all that we do mean to you?
And Lango, while that's been populated, I just wanted to go over something you've already said. This innovation piece is not about somebody with a pair of jeans, a black t-shirt, and a pair of Vans. This is about just changing the way we do things, if it makes sense to change the way we do things. It means becoming agile so that we can respond to a challenge, we can respond to an opportunity really quickly. And universities, by nature, are usually risk-averse. We often say universities move at the speed of a glacier, but of course that's not true anymore. Glaciers are much faster than universities because of climate change. But the point is we have to be agile, and that means doing things like you've set up here, that we can't be afraid to fail. Everything doesn't have to be perfect before we try it. We learn from our mistakes, and we try things that put us in a better place in the end. Yeah. There we go. That's coming up. Look at that. Take risks. There's the cue right there. Let's take a few risks. Let's be creative, I think. Be bold, flexible, collaborative. These are all the things that we should aspire to at a university. The processes that we use at this university to do anything, whether it's procuring something or it's setting up a new course, these are policies and procedures that we own, that we've had in place, and we have to ourselves go, you know what, we don't have to do what we did 50 years ago. It's okay to try something a different way. So I'm glad to see that coming up. Less bureaucracy fits right in that package.
There was a comment about try something. So
try
the action is good, right? Not just analyzing. Yeah.
Courage, absolutely. You need to be courageous to be creative as well. Willingness to change. Let's be solutions focused. I see coming up there, which is fantastic.
The reducing silos and the collaboration, I think, is key. And that's one of the key aspects that came up in the different conversations we had as well. How do we break the barriers so that people can actually come up with these new cool ideas? You have to get out of your own silo and your own way of looking at it. You do. To do that one.
And somebody's just put on the bottom there, try something from other universities that have worked. And I think that's, we often don't look at our colleagues across universities in Canada or globally to see what are the cool things that they're doing. And it's okay to sort of mimic or use the same kinds of things that other universities are doing.
It reminds me of a saying by Polanyi: I can't scrutinize my spectacles with my spectacles.
That's exactly.
I need somebody else from a
this
different
one's interesting,
field to do it.
decolonize the value statement. So I think that's something that absolutely we need to be looking at, the language that goes into the strategic vision and a language that goes forward. Reduce siloing is something, Alango, that we had, I think, 10 faculty board meetings. That came up 10 times. That the silos across faculties are really difficult. It makes it really hard to put on innovative courses, to do innovative research. And then we've also heard in our divisions, the siloing within divisions even sometimes is a bit of a problem.
I think the willingness to change, the last comment here, that it was interesting that we all want the change, but to be willing to go through the discomfort of change, that becomes a key aspect.
Absolutely.
I think we are...
We're being told to wrap it up.
We get the signs from the timekeepers here to move to the next question. So, what specific initiatives does UVic need to engage in to be a leader in innovation in all that we do? Your suggestions and ideas.
And just to remind people, we're doing this town hall today, getting some ideas, but we're open for ideas for the next few months.
Absolutely.
So don't stop submitting ideas. You can go online to the Strategic Visioning website. You can bang the table, you can send an email, make a video, make a movie, I don't know, do anything you want, send it in if you've got great ideas. So we're open to lots of ideas.
I love that first one, Kevin. Fewer committees, yes.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know, I'm not sure how I feel. At UVic, I've been on more committees than I've been on in my whole life. And I don't know whether that's because of my role or because we've actually got more committees than anybody else, but that's a good one. Fewer forms, I think that's partially being innovative, isn't it? How can we do things without more forms, or how can we do more
And
things
shorter
online?
forms, I would add. Fewer and shorter forms.
Yeah,
Would be
absolutely.
good.
Invest in grad students, and postdocs are underfunded, and we wouldn't disagree, and we've been trying to work with the government on this, working amongst ourselves as well, so we have to deal with that.
The idea of changing our meeting culture so that there is space for real thinking and collaboration, I think, is a good one as well.
I think that's fantastic. We often pack our agendas with items that could be just for information.
Information out,
right?
yeah.
And rather have a more discussion for more creative ideas. Change the metric for outcomes to allow errors and failures. Absolutely, that's critical. If we're going to accept failure, which is a part of innovation, we can't have a blame culture, right? Where we say, oh, no, that should have worked. So that's absolutely fantastic. I'm interested in this one, encourage more play among staff. I'm not quite sure what Miranda's getting at there, but I think that's a great concept to be perhaps a little less rigid amongst what we do and how we do things here. Encourage collaboration, not competition. That's a great one as well.
Reverse mentoring, yeah, that's a very good one. The longer we stay in a certain role, we get stuck in certain ways of thinking, and we think of mentoring the newer people. Maybe it should be the other way around in terms of making sure we can broaden our lens.
And perhaps we even need to look for a new word, because mentoring, I'm not sure, not such a great word. Yeah. So change the budget allocation approach and system to encourage collaboration. I like that one. But this is where we get stuck on old ways again, isn't it? We've had the same budget model for 55 years, 56 years. But we're going to have to look at that for sure.
Ask unlikely members to join our committees. They just shot past here. I think the notion of making sure we always have a devil's advocate or somebody who thinks very differently on the committees to challenge our thinking. I think that's a good way to push this forward. Yeah.
What do we got? Meeting free Friday. Sign me up.
Yes.
Think about hierarchy, how hierarchy stifles innovation. I think that's a great comment. Absolutely.
And look outside the university for ideas, best practices from other places.
And again, we hear this, we see this all the time, slow down work pace for creativity to happen. Let's make some space for people to be creative, to be innovative. Yeah.
We got the signal to move on to the next theme, so thank you for that. And the last theme here. Partnering for positive change. This gets at the notion that in the grand scheme of things, we are a small to medium-sized institution, and if you truly want to have the kind of big impact and punch above our weight, one way to do that is have these strategic alliances and partnerships so that we can truly have a big impact. And that gets to bringing down the barriers and getting away from the silos, both within campus, between the faculties and divisions, between the administrative units, the academic units and the administrative units, but also the partnerships between the university and the indigenous communities, the international partners that we have, the community, local communities that we would have, the big industries, as well as research institutions and governments. And if we are skilled, if we are strategic in how we form these partnerships, we would be able to do far more than what we can do in any of these big goals that we are trying to get at on our own. The different labels that came up, boundaryless university, partnering without boundaries, partnering for meaningful impact. And in terms of specific action items, facilitate cross-department visiting scholars program. Maybe that's the one good way to start, where we actually have people moving across the units on campus, and cross-disciplinary opportunities for team teaching. I love the next one, connect innovation, administrative innovation, and faculty research expertise through some kind of a joint applied research center where people actually have secondments, people who have a shared interest can come and work together, and the focus can shift over time to different aspects. Right? Open the campus up to the community, host events, have campus tours, welcome the community into our space, engage with the local issues, engage with local and regional economic development and other activities, and create a virtual hub at the university where people can actually understand and know what the different initiatives are, what the engagements are, what the opportunities are, and how they can actually get connected. So different ideas, different thoughts, and making sure that we have this partnership going, we encourage people to get connected, and over a period of time, we get very skilled in doing it so that we are always moving forward and always having a bigger impact than we would if we just operated on our own. With that, the first question, what does partnering for positive change mean to you in your place in the organization?
I think partnerships are absolutely critical for universities as we move forward. Partnerships have to be really deep, meaningful partnerships, two-way partnerships, and that requires us as universities to actually have a little bit of humility. We often think we're the smart ones all the time. We have to be able to listen to our partners, and we have to be able to synthesize what they're telling us. And so it should be a real two-way piece of knowledge being exchanged. And I'll just reflect, I was at a UNESCO event last week where an academic was talking about community-based research and how important it is for co-design of any of the studies that are going on. But then the young academic used the word experts. You know, the information should come to us as experts, and then we'll synthesize the results. And I thought, well, you know, to be a partner, you shouldn't call yourself an expert. You may have some knowledge about something, but knowledge comes from all different groups. And so we have to be better at partnering than what we are right now as a university.
I think the language I saw in one of the discussions was partnering with humility.
Yeah, absolutely. Collaboration is fantastic, absolutely. Listening, I think you've seen some of these things come up. A shared voice, community engagement, reciprocity, knowledge democracy.
I think the reciprocity one is a good one, Kevin, where we talk about what is it we bring to the table and what is it they bring to the table. And there's a certain synergy, and both sides walk away benefiting. It's not just about what we gain, but also what they would gain in doing that.
Absolutely. Being open-minded, that's a fantastic word to see up there. Inclusion, again, comes up. Mindfulness, humility. So we're seeing very much the same types of words come up.
I think I saw the unlikely partnerships flash by. I think it's still up there. The notion that we need to be creative in thinking about the kinds of partners we have, not just the usual set of entities we'll reach out to, but be very creative and be bold in the kind of partnerships that we build.
Real world impact, of course, we want to make impact with our partnerships. We want to make an impact on ourselves, and we want to make an impact locally and globally.
And the community-led partnerships, it's that we don't always have to be in the driver's seat in building these networks, that we should be willing to be part of a group. If somebody else is leading it, that's okay. We just have to be strategic in doing it.
Very hard sometimes for universities to accept. Right? We always have to be the leader, the driver. But I think moving forward, this is the way we have to work with our partnerships. You see honesty coming up here, respect, connections to community. The knowledge democracy is an interesting piece as well, and how we mobilize our knowledge.
I saw global engagement come up as well. The key that we need to really go beyond just the Canadian context, look at the partners we have around the world to truly have an impact and a presence on the global stage.
I see just up at the side here, talk to students, and I think that's a great thing. Do we actually talk to students about some of the offerings we have on Play or some of the activities on our campus? And I know we do have student representation on a number of committees and groups, but do we talk enough? And we certainly heard that when we went out and met with, over 1,000 students at these pop-up booths. Some of the ideas they had were fantastic, and they would often say, well, you should have just come and asked us in the first place. We could have told you the answer to these problems. But it's true. The engagement with students is absolutely critical.
Yeah. So thank you for your ideas. We got the signal that we have to move on to the next part of it. So we will take your feedback. As I said, this actually feeds into the thinking that's going to guide us as we move through the summer. So let me show you where we are. So we are at the beginning of phase 3, and this phase 3 goes all the way up to early fall. We have the different senior leaders of the university, the different people reporting to Kevin, each taking ownership of one of those. Sorry, I moved on to.
That's all right.
That's all right.
This is live TV. This happens.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
It's okay to fail, right?
Yeah.
We're being innovative
here. Here we are, the specific initiatives to make UVic a leader in partnering for positive change.
Yeah, and I like the first one, host communities of practice. We often, again, get siloed by our faculty or by our department or by our division. And if you actually, have problem-solving communities, that works a lot better. UVic employee, not staff or faculty. Man, whoever CES is, I love that one. Because that's where I've come from in Australia, and nobody's called faculty and staff. And we did hear this a lot about the divide amongst faculty and staff, and we have to work towards that sense of collegiality and sense of all one, that we all work here at the university and we're all here to make the student experience the best thing possible for that. I like the multi-university shared academic programs. That somehow we have to figure out how to break down those silos so we can actually partner across faculties to have those multidisciplinary degrees and or multi-university degrees, right?
I know. A wonderful idea from Basma there about action research, making sure that we are actually engaged and connected as we do our research, not just sitting within the campus.
Right, yeah. And DW with a biannual open house, terrific idea. What a way to engage with the community, right? To bring the community onto our campus, but also importantly for us to go out into the community, because we often just think everybody should come here and visit us. But what are we doing to get out there and tell everybody about UVic within the community? So great idea. An online hub to join with community partners. That sounds like a great idea, Heather, thanks. Open the campus to community groups. I think we do need to be more porous with our boundaries so that people can come in and out of the campus very easily. Thanks, Ruben, for that. Base funding for interdisciplinary programs. I think that's one way to help start breaking down the silos.
I like the one about making it easier for partners to engage in. I think we need to make sure the external partners know what we are up to for them to actually understand and to want to connect. So unless we actually inform them, we are not going to be able to get that wide network of partners that we
And then once they want to partner, we got to get rid of that 27-page legal document that you have to sign to be a partner. Action-based, not just talk, just a report on paper. I agree. I think action-based has to be the way of our future to make those changes we need. Space for alumni to come back to campus. That's a fantastic idea. I don't know if anybody's seen the beautiful UBC alumni house right in the middle of their campus. Maybe something like that would be great.
Staff exchanges with other universities in BC, in other provinces and other countries. We know that we always have faculty and students moving around, but getting staff to actually have the same benefit, I think, will be central to what we do.
And I think we're being told it's time for the next slide, Elanco.
All right, now it's time for the next slide.
But thanks for all those great ideas, and we're recording all of these, so
absolutely,
there's some fantastic ideas.
Now let me get back to what I was saying before. These ideas, these input, I think, become a critical part of what we're going to do over the summer. We are at the beginning of that phase 3. We have the different leaders on campus taking ownership of each of these themes. They are going to put together a group around each of these themes, groups made up from students, faculty, staff, community members, who will do a deep dive into each of these themes to actually extract from that the action items and a plan for bringing that theme fully to life. And that goes on till the fall, early in September of 2022, at which point the different teams will actually give their contributions back to the group, and we'll stitch all those individual theme plans together to come up with a draft plan that then gets once again circulated. We get some reactions, we get some feedback, and revise that. By the end of the year, we ought to have a full plan ready that can go up to the Senate and the board for approval. So in terms of the next concrete steps, you still have time to actually get engaged, to give us your ideas. We still have the online survey and the idea boards that are up there for you to give us your thoughts, your feedback, specific initiatives, your interpretation of the themes. And we'll also make sure there are engagement booths where people can go up to actually have a conversation and to give us your thoughts and ideas. The tags, as we call it, thematic advisory groups, groups of about 8 to 10 people around each of these themes, led by one of the senior executives of the university. Any thoughts, any ideas you may have, you can also send it directly to the tags as well. Right? So your input and contributions are critical as we move into the next phase, because that becomes the foundation of the action plan that will come out of it. Kevin, with that, I'll hand it over
That's
to you
it,
for
over
the
to the
last.
thank you slide. So first of all, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming today in person or being online. It's really critical that your voices get heard as we're starting to get to the tough end of this process where we want to figure out where UVic's moving. And of course, it's easy for you and I to stand up here and look half proficient, but it takes a whole team, and I wanted to thank the team that put this event together today, the technical team and our office team. And James is holding up a sign that says, "Great job." And it absolutely is a great job, but really we appreciate all of the comments that you've given us, the feedback you're giving us. And don't forget to go to the uvic.ca/strategic planning website and use Bang the Table to keep submitting your ideas as we move forward. Lots of time to reflect on these themes that we've heard today, lots of time to make suggestions around what some of the actions could be. And I think as this starts to pull together and we get a draft vision or draft version of the strategic plan over the summer, we'll all get back together as a campus community in the fall, and we'll look at what that draft looks like, and we'll sort of tear it apart and kick it around and panel beat it and make it work for this university. But I'm really I'm excited and energized. I love what was coming up here today. I think people are thinking around these themes, and I love the fact that these themes are agnostic to whether you're a student, an alumni, a faculty, a staff member, or the community. And that's terrific. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us today, and we look forward to catching up soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.